Hey guys, welcome back to the Paladins Alliance. EPL conference is done. Valencia on the horizon, Cologne on the horizon, and the player break as well. So I will be definitely pumping out more content in the near future now that I'm here at home and able to put out more videos. And we've got a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. Cologne, the biggest point of contention as of right now. Lots of crazy storylines of a lot of great teams coming in, and I wanted to make a couple of videos. I have a couple of things prepared in the pipeline to actually put out for this event, and hopefully you guys enjoy. So I want to talk about particularly Spirit right now going into Cologne, because they're going to be starting the play-in. They're going to have to get through those two BO3s initially, and then they're going to actually have to brave the frontier of the S tier Cologne. And when we look at Cologne, there's a lot of really competitive teams, and we had a very competitive Spirit, frankly, at the major. And I wanted to see more of them. We weren't able to, but here we have them at Cologne. And the problem is, though, is they have lost degster, and now they are bringing in W0nderful. And what is the issue that this brings? Well, degster, frankly, was the heart and beating soul of Spirit. It was the defining characteristics of the identity of the team. Personified through one person, and that was degster. Somebody who was very aggressive, who would take matters into his own hands, play very balls to the walls, Counter-Strike, and you would definitely see that he was able to do that at a very high level. Even when the team was down and out, the organization was down and out, he was still putting up great numbers. So I think that he was always a fantastic player to keep your eyes on. But now that he's out the door, he didn't want to actually relocate alongside the team to Serbia. Now they have to find another option. And when we look at the options that could potentially have been picked up, you have to think about who could it have been. Well, you have to go down the list. You have a lot of teams that you can pick from, but who actually would have properly fit into the category? Well, CIS is filled with a lot of talent, but AWPs, that's always going to be a tough ask no matter where you're looking from, right? So when we think about who we can pick up, we look at K23, do you want to pick up used goods and exit power? Well, we know that there's certain mentality issues with him as a player. He isn't necessarily consistent at tier 1 lands, so maybe you don't want to go to him. Maybe beyond that, you have players like Deco from W0n. That's not a bad shout. Maybe he could have been probably the only other alternative that I could potentially see working, but they decided not to go with him. Who else? I've actually written down a couple of options here. Yeah, well then, beyond that, you can't actually go to any of these storied players because you frankly don't have enough money to buy them out. Just CIS in general refused to actually have a buyout for some of these players. Or it's just obscene numbers. And then you go down to maybe one shot. You can go to FPS, but even then, I don't really necessarily know if you want to take a chance on him. Maybe you could get a call up from another academy player. I don't know if you want to do that as well after you've already called up Patsy and Siren. So maybe you don't want to go that young. Obviously, W0nderful is 17 years old, so I'm not really sure what the reasoning was in terms of that, but still, nonetheless, it looks like W0nderful is one of, if not the best options to actually pick up. Now, there are issues to bringing up W0nderful into this team, right? You have the fact that he's a young player, is incredibly young, 17 years of age. He has not played an official since February of this year. February. And the actual official that he played was under the old Hellraisers lineup, which wasn't even the one with Angel in it. It was a lineup that just had a bunch of budget stars from Ukraine, and they weren't actually able to do any damage. They went to a couple multi-vibes tournaments and just got knocked out immediately. So they aren't necessarily a very tenured team, not playing against very tenured teams in general. And for that reason, that has cause for concern. He hasn't played tier 2 lands. He hasn't played tier 2 online. How is he going to fare against a tier 1 land, one of the biggest tournaments of the year in Cologne, with Spirit, who have a lot of pressure to actually perform well now that they made that semifinal at Antwerp, right? So a lot of question marks in that sense. And then beyond that, well, how is he going to fit into the system of this team? Because you have a very hyper-aggressive Spirit core in Patsy and Siren, and how do you actually, and I mean, even Chopper to some extent, but how does W0nderful actually fit into that? What play style does he have coming into this lineup that is going to make or break how Spirit operates? And so when you think about it, well, how does he play? So from the demos that I've watched, I was actually going to pull up a lot of highlights to put here and actually have it a little bit more edited. But after scrubbing through the demos, I've realized that it's probably not the best viewing experience because he is an incredibly passive player. He doesn't necessarily love to go very aggressive. If he does, it's usually with the Mac turn MP9 and a conversion round. He doesn't necessarily go too aggressive with the AWP. Maybe a little bit with the rifle here and there, but even then, that's by design, just with the weapons that he's playing with. But with the AWP, you don't necessarily see him too proactive. He's a player that tries to play a lot of passive lines, but try to play a lot of off angles. Doesn't really set himself up to get an opening pick. He's rather a player that tries to pull up, kill back. And for that reason, it brings a couple of questions when you think about how Wonderful is playing and whether or not this is the right player to add into the identity of Spirit as a whole, right? And when we look at what he's bringing to the table, does it make sense to have Wonderful in this lineup? Well, yes and no. On one hand, it would really suck because you're essentially detracting that huge proponent of a very aggressive AWP player, one who's always going to take matters into his own hands and try to take after opponents and fight down Vertigo B ramp, break open squeaky door and fight upper nuke, go aggressive down and long on Dust 2 and try to look for picks. Like, if you have that type of player, you keep that identity alive of Spirit and you can kind of try to work around Wonderful and refine your footing. Now, if you're going to keep Wonderful in the same type of roles that he's playing on his previous teams, well, that's a little bit different now because now you have a more passive AWP. Think a player more in line with a James, right? And that player has to now not necessarily search for picks, but be a little bit more comfortable in just getting the necessary kills and getting a kill every round, having a very comfortable ADR in that sense. And when he is up to clutch, then perhaps he does clutch, perhaps he saves. Not necessarily a close range opper that is going to clutch every time in the T side situations, maybe in the CT side situations possibly, but that is a bit of cause for concern. So where does Spirit want to actually go with this lineup? Do they want to, rest on their laurels and say, Patsy, Siren, you guys are hella aggressive riflers. There's no reason for a Wonderful to go as aggressive as he is. So maybe we just sit back, allow Wonderful to just rack up kills from the backs of bomb sites and make him a little bit more anchor heavy, play for retakes and whatnot. That's a question that we're gonna have to that's gonna have to get answered at Cologne, and I'm excited to see whether or not they want to actually pivot him in that lineup. And the issue is that, well, if they don't make main event, if they don't make a deep playoff event, what does it mean for Spirit? Does that mean that we just immediately see another downturn in the organization? Because it feels like we're having a repeat of what happened to the original lineup with Degster, right? When he initially came onto the team. They come to Katowice online, they burst through, they get, I believe, top 4, top 2 or something like that at 2020's Katowice. And from then on, they had immediate downturn in results. They weren't ever able to replicate that, and they kind of fizzled out. They had their huge calamity of a DH November. They had to bench a lot of players, and now with this reintegrated lineup, they found their footing again, and I'm worried that they won't be actually able to refine their footing and maintain themselves as a top team. And it starts here with Wonderful. There's a lot of pressure on this guy to perform, and for him to actually make a case that he is one of the best prospects of CIS opping, right? And I don't necessarily have the utmost faith in him to immediately transition because the spots that he plays can be pretty easily read with a couple of demo watching and a couple studying of the tapes. And I hope that perhaps that he will not get found out and that he can actually find his form and his identity with this Spirit lineup. So I made this video just to particularly talk about it and talk about him. And there isn't going to be much edits as I was expecting, just because I think that Wonderful should just be a point of discussion in the grander scheme of Cologne. There's a lot of moving parts to this event, and I want to kind of dissect it over time as we lead up to the event. That when you go in, you kind of know what my head's at, where the consensus of the public should be at, and what we should be looking towards when we see these play-ins play out, when we see the main event play out, and when we get to that playoff setting, whether or not we actually have the teams that deserve to be there, or whether we have some upsets sprinkled in as well. So That's all from me. It's probably a really short video just in general. And I just wanted to get back into the saddle of making content and make a little bit of a talking piece about Wonderful. I've been very excited to see what the Spirit lineup might look like, what identity they want to go moving forward. And I hope you guys enjoy just me rambling a little bit about Wonderful and Team Spirit in general. So if you like that, leave a like down below. Just let me know if you like this kind of talking content. It's stuff that I know a lot of analysts have been doing, but I enjoy doing this as well, just talking about Counter-Strike into a camera. And if not, then just let me know. Let me know what you want to see, what types of videos you want to see, and I'll definitely try to make videos like that in the future. So this is Paladin. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.